Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us and taking the time out of your busy schedule to invest in yourself and your leadership. As a good friend of mine, Keith Abraham, says, failure to invest in yourself means you are a poor judge of a good investment. So, thanks for joining us here today. Look, we're cracking on. We're going to head into the Coaching Leader Online Masterclass. So it's going to be a great session and all about coaching skills and how they enhance your leadership. Now, for those of you that don't know who I am, my name is Clifford Morgan. I'm a leadership expert and an organizational psychologist. And my story starts in the Air Force. All right, I have a background in the military. You can see me here in Baghdad. And for many years, I was a weapons instructor and a patrol commander. And during that time, I was instrumental in standing up the Air Force Leadership Coaching Program locally at RAF Base Amberley. Now, once I hung up my boots and rifle full time, I went and studied psychology and started the 8-year journey to become a fully endorsed organizational psychologist. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means I take psychology and I apply it in the workplace. And for the last 6 years, I have been running my own consulting business, working with leaders and helping them get the most out of their people at work. So there's a lot of leadership development that goes on there, a lot of individual executive coaching, one-on-one with senior leaders, but also team coaching with leadership teams. And as you can tell, I'm a big believer in the power of coaching skills. And I believe that coaching skills, when you apply them to your leadership, can enhance every single thing that you do as a leader, both your performance and the performance of your people. And it's why I wrote this particular book called The Coaching Leader, Essential Skills to Enhance Your Leadership and Develop Your People every single day. And today in this session, really I'm going to be sharing some of the core concepts from this particular book. And once we've done that and I've shared that, what I'll do is make some available to you, some extra resources that every single person will be able to take away and continue on your journey and to start coaching straight away, right? And also some special offers for those who are registered for the today. For those that actually want to, they're interested in this topic and want to take the next step in their own leadership development, get a little bit extra help. There's some special offers for those that have registered today. So let's dive in. Now, I just want to set your expectations that today I want it to be an interactive and dynamic session and engaging. I'm a psychologist. I love the engagement. I love the feedback. So I'll have the chat open. Make sure that you are ready to put your questions in and your comments in the chat. If I say something that's really good that you like, give me a thumbs up or a clapping emoji just so I can get that feedback and I know what resonates with you. And as I said, I want it to be engaging. So if you have a question, then please put them in the chat or raise your little hand and I'll know to stop and answer that question as we go through. There will be the opportunity for questions at the end as well. Is that okay? Put something in the chat if that's okay with you guys, just to get things rolling there. Good to see all those thumbs ups and emojis coming through. Excellent. Love it. All right. Hey, so let's kick off. And I want to start by just sort of saying that from my perspective, leadership has a dual responsibility. There's kind of like two focuses for leadership, regardless of what context you are leading in. And those two are, first of all, driving performance. Now, whatever performance looks like in your industry or in your organization and in your team, you need to, as a leader, drive that performance. The second thing that you need to do is develop capability, and that's absolutely inherent in all that we do. Leaders should not just be, encouraging people to perform at their level, but they want to develop the capability of individuals and then collectively as the team so they can increase performance, right? But not only that, not just to increase performance, but also to develop the capability, the leadership capability within organizations. And ultimately, in a healthy organization, leaders are developing more leaders, right? That are able to that's how the organizational capability grows, and that is how we develop layers of leaders right throughout the organization, so that there's an organic pipeline of leaders that happens there. So we don't have to keep recruiting from outside. We've got someone ready to step up into that next leadership position straight away, and that's all a sign of a really good, healthy organization. And so many people in the leadership game, they focus on driving performance and driving performance only. They aren't focusing intentionally on the leadership development and the capability development aspect of their role as leaders. Tell me if that resonates with you. Who here sort of says, "Well, yeah, I get that, and I probably don't." Tell me in the chat, do you get that from your leaders? Do you get the development piece? Is it as intentional as you want? Put something in the chat. I love seeing coming those through. So Dave is saying yes, he gets that. Awesome for you, Dave. Sally's saying no, like it's performance only. And that's often the case, Sally, in the way that these or people's experience in a lot of the leaders that I talk to and I'm coaching, they don't get that leadership development piece, right? And this has become increasingly more important. And the reason is, if you look at the research, well, the millennials in particular, they are expecting up to 50% more development in their workplace than previous generations. And when you actually look at it, the thing that's really interesting for me, right, is that where that leadership development comes from. They don't necessarily want to be sent away on a 2-week leadership development program or, get some external provider in. They want the leadership development to come from their immediate supervisor. They want mentoring type relationships with their managers. So people these days are not willing to just turn up and do their job and do a good job. They actually want to turn up, do their job, do well, but also grow and progress in the process. And these are the I guess, changing development needs of our workforce. And as leaders, we need to make sure that we are meeting those needs. Because if we're not meeting those needs, well, it's never been easier for them to go elsewhere and find another organization where those needs will be met. And in the current environment, this war for talent and attraction and retention is one of the biggest things, biggest kind of issues that organizations and leaders are dealing with. And in reality, it's this development piece that actually, again, if you look at all the research, that's more important to the workforce these days than money is, right? And money becomes important if they are looking for somebody somewhere else to work. But if they are getting developed and they have all these development needs met, and it's a good work environment with a good culture that they feel like is investing in them, then they're not going to be looking elsewhere. And so that becomes really important. And really, when I start talking about leadership and developing people, a coaching leader, right? The title of the book, the title of this masterclass, is someone who focuses on doing that. They definitely focuses on the dual responsibility. So they are driving performance, they are developing capability, but they're using coaching skills to do that. They're using coaching skills to influence people, to create the behavioral change that is necessary in order to achieve the results and to grow individuals and teams. And that's what a coaching leader is, and that's what they do. And we can kind of talk a lot about people and talk a lot about how coaching skills can apply in leaders and leadership. But we've only got a limited amount of time today, so I just want to focus on one type of area where this works. And this is really around problem solving, right? What do you do when your people come and say, "Hey, I've got a problem"? How do you handle that as a leader? And when I think about that, and I talk to most leaders, and particularly in coaching sessions, and I ask that question of the leader that I'm coaching, there's three common things that we do, all right? Or generally what we do is we give them an answer, all right? We provide them a solution and we go and tell them what they need to do. And why do we do that, all right? Why are we telling them all the time? It's because it's quick, it's easy, and we get the solution that we want, that we think is the best solution. And the reality is that when we've got so much on our plate these days in terms of workload and pressure, then we want something to be quick and we want something to be easy so we can kind of solve the problem and then move on, right? And we want the solution that we know works because it gives us the confidence that the thing is going to be solved and that we can move on and complete the rest of the work that we've got to do. And it relieves that pressure a little bit. And the other thing is, right, it's kind of what we need to do as leaders. When our people have problems, well, we need to help. Part of our role as leaders is helping our people, serving our people. And if we're giving them the solution to the problem, then that's helping them, right? Here's what happens if we are consistently telling our people what to do. The first thing is they stop thinking. Because when they come to you with a problem, you give them a solution, all right? And then they go away and they implement that solution and it works, which is awesome, great, problem solved. But what happens next time that they encounter a problem? Well, they've got to go to the source of their last solution, and that's you. They're not even going to try and think about what the problem is and how can they solve it and come up with a solution. They're just going to go to the source of their last solution. They're going to go to you. And if you are constantly repeating this particular cycle, what we're doing is we're training our people to rely on us to solve their problems. We're training them to stop, to not to think, and to come to us and present the problems to us. And this is where I talk about creating passive problem presenters. Now, best intent, right? Leaders who are telling people what to do and they're giving solutions, and providing answers and kind of telling people what to do to solve problems, best intent. But in reality, we're kind of treating our people like children, right? We're telling them what they need to do rather than treating them like adults and saying, well, hey, you need to actually come up with a solution, and encouraging them to do that. And the thing is that when we are getting people to, we're training them to be passive problem presenters, when they're relying on us to solve their problem, for us, we become the bottleneck in the organization as leaders. Everything comes to us. Now, we've got our own workload to do, but also we're solving everybody's problems and everything slows down. Performance drops because we are the bottleneck. And therefore, we're under so much pressure. We're under pressure from above to get, drive this performance for the organization. We're also pressure from underneath as our people are kind of pushing these problems up. There's pressure externally and there's pressure internally as we put ourselves under more pressure to deal with the pressure that we're under. As a result, so often leaders will burn out and then they'll break. And broken people leave organizations, right? Or worse, they stick around and they stay and they keep turning up to work broken. And just like a machine with a broken part, if you continue to run that machine, that broken part continues to get more damaged. And over time, it will start to damage all the parts around it. And, in an organizational setting with leaders, they're going to break and be broken and then just continue to get more and more stressed, burnt out, damaged, and it's going to spread across the team. Performance is going to drop, and definitely people aren't going to be developed and to grow in an environment like that. So really what we're sort of saying here is that there is a need to make a shift. And it's the shift from telling people to asking them. Instead of giving them an answer, on providing a solution and telling them what they need to do when they come and present a problem to you, the shift that I'm encouraging you to consider is to actually start asking them questions. We're asking them what they could, should, or would do in a particular scenario when they've got a problem that is there. It's like, well, just asking them. And here's what happens, right? when we start asking people questions from a leadership perspective. When we start asking people questions, we've got smart people, right, in our teams. And so when we ask a question, we actually force people to think. We're actually engaging their brain, all right? Because in order to answer the question that you ask, they have to think. They have to think about an answer. Now, if we've got smart people that are thinking on our team, well, ultimately they're going to have some insight. And when they get that flash of insight, that penny drop moment for them, when they come up with a solution that is their own, they get a flash of, or they get a spark of dopamine in the brain, a hit of dopamine. Now, that chemical we know is associated with reward, and it makes you feel really good, right? But dopamine is an interesting neurochemical. Yes, it is associated with reward. Yes, it does make us feel really good. But the primary purpose of dopamine is actually motivation. See, motivation or dopamine is at its highest right before we cross the finish line, right before we achieve the goal, not when we achieve the goal. And that's when we are most motivated to finish. And so dopamine is a really interesting chemical. Now, the other thing about dopamine, right, the byproduct in our brain, once it's used and the brain's processed it, is actually adrenaline and acetylcholine. So adrenaline energizes us, so we've got more energy, but then the combination of adrenaline and acetylcholine is this magic neurochemical combination in our brains that allows us to focus on what we need to do. And so as a result of getting the insight, having that spike in dopamine, we actually feel good, we are more motivated, and we are more focused. Now, as a result, in that state, we are more productive and we're more proactive, right? We're more motivated, so we get a bit of momentum, and therefore we take the initiative and be proactive, and we achieve more in the short amount of time frame. We're more proactive. As a result of that, we feel really good. We achieve a whole lot more, and therefore we're satisfied in the workplace. Now, when you think about it, if you as an employee or just an individual in the workplace, if you are feeling good, are motivated and focused, you're productive and proactive, and you're feeling satisfied, why would you ever want to leave a workplace like that? You are going to be enjoying yourself. You're going to feel like it's an environment where it gets the most out of you. And so this is where those development needs of our current workforce are really getting met. And it's really important from a retention perspective, right? They're not going to be looking elsewhere. And so that's really important. I just want you to take a moment and think, when was the last time that you were asked a question by your leader and you kind of got that insight? Can you think about a time when all that just kind of happened in your head, and how did it feel? How did it feel? Put it in the chat. I'm really interested because I can think of a number of times in my military career and my career outside where the leader that I have been working with, and I kind of present a problem, and they kind of just ask me a bunch of questions. They've essentially coached me, right? What they do then is, or what happened for me, my experience was that I felt exactly that. I felt good. I felt motivated. I was able to come up with the solution myself. And as a result, I felt empowered, right? Which is really important. Yeah, that's exactly right. Sally's saying empowered here in the chat. And David, yeah, you're saying that you were more motivated and you owned the solution. That's exactly right. One of the other things about this whole process of coaching, right, is that people are coming up with their own solutions. And as a result of that, well, they're more motivated to actually run away and implement it. They're more likely to take responsibility for the outcome and own that outcome. Therefore, more willing to go above and beyond the minimum that's required in order to get the result that's necessary. And so you can kind of see now, just by understanding what's going on in the psychology, I guess, of that sits behind coaching, that it does definitely influence people's performance. you know, in all that sort of space. And we're not even really talking here about developing capability yet. We're just talking about in the single instance that's going on there. So it's like great to see that you guys can relate and resonate. Some of this resonates with your experience already. So essentially, this is what coaching is, right? Coaching is asking strategic questions, right? It's a process where we ask people questions and then they come up with the answers themselves. So if you're presenting a problem to you, you ask them a bunch of questions. What could they, should they, or would they do in particular context, the context that they're in, and they come up with the solution themselves, right? And in that way, they become more motivated. If next time they encounter a problem, they go to the source of their last solution. But if that source of their last solution was them, then they go, oh, right, I'm gonna stop and I'm gonna think about that themselves. We're training them to think, okay? And so really coaching is all about asking strategic questions. And so let's kind of go on, like, what are the questions that we ask? What are the questions that we ask? I want to share with you a bit of a framework to just kind of guide some of those questions here. And this framework is called the GROW model. All right, this is the most simple coaching model that's out there. It is the oldest in terms of this was the one that Sir John Whitmore, who's credited as being the godfather of executive coaching and in the corporate workplace, this was the model that he came up with and introduced, and it's still 100% relevant. I use it a lot when I'm coaching now, and it's talking about the goal, the reality, the options, and the way forward. Okay, and so let's kind of stop and we'll tackle each one of these, right? So the goal. Now, in reality, people often don't have clarity as to what they're working towards. Unless you can clearly articulate what the goal is, what you are working towards, then you can't be intentional about figuring out and developing a plan to get there. Okay. Now, so many people that I encounter, they come and they talk to me about all this problem and everything like that, and I simply go, okay, cool. So, what do you want? What are you working towards? What's the goal that you want here in this particular situation? And I just get this blank stare. They've been so caught up in the problem that they haven't actually thought about what the solution that they want or the outcome that they want is. So the first place is, let's actually get some clarity around that. It's a bit like Stephen Covey, begin with the end in mind. What is the outcome that you're after? What is the goal that you want to achieve? Now, sometimes in order to do that, you've got to get clarity on the problem first. I love the quote by G.K. Chesterton, who says that it's not that people can't find the solution, it's that they can't see the problem. And that's so true. I find that so many times. They're looking at the surface problem, but they don't actually know what the underlying problem might be. Okay, and so you ask a few questions to get some clarity. What's the real issue here? What's the real problem? And then you go, okay, cool. Once we've tackled that, what's the goal? What's the solution that you're looking for? What's the outcome that you're after? And once you've got clarity there, then you can start figuring out what the next step is, right? And working towards that goal. So the next stage is the reality. So we're asking questions here to understand the current context. What's the current reality within which we're working? So these are questions along the lines of what are the constraints that we need to operate within? What are the priorities that we need to keep front of mind? What are the different environmental factors? Who are the different stakeholders? What are their priorities? There's a whole bunch of questions here. Just getting clarity on, it's kind of like where we are. If the goal is where we want to go, we've got to understand where we are now. And so you're asking questions around what are the resources that we've got? What have we done previously? What has worked? What hasn't worked? All those sorts of questions. And then once we understand the reality, we start to explore the options. And so we go, okay, cool. What options do we have to get from our current reality to our goal and actually achieve the outcome we're after? And so we start brainstorming here. It's like, what could we do? And we're asking a whole lot of options. Now, there's a couple of key points to successful coaching in this space. And the first one is that we want the person we are asking the questions of, our staff, our team member, we want them to come up with as many options as possible. This is the part where we are encouraging them to think, okay, more so than any other part. Now, based on my experience, here's what's going to happen. You're going to say, hey, what are the options? And they're going to say 1, 2, or 3, all right, A, B, and C. And then they'll stop there. And the reality is that that's the easy thinking. What you need to do as a leader using coaching skills is to encourage them to think, okay, and what else? The AWE question, as Michael Bungay Stanier often refers to. And this is to prompt them to think harder, to do the hard thinking that they wouldn't do unless you pushed them. And this is often where the best thinking happens. All right, this is where the absolute gold in this process comes. Now, what I often do is when I'm coaching senior executives, I'll try and push people to come up with 6 or 7 different options. And so often I've had senior executives come back and to me and say, well, you know what, it was the 6th or the 7th idea that I had that was the most valuable. That's the one we're going to use, and that's the course of action we're going to pursue, right? So push people to do that. Now, people don't know what they don't know, and so they can't put an option on the table if they don't know what that is. So it's only after you've exhausted their brain power and their thinking that you might say, well, hey, do you mind if I put an option or 2 on the table as well? And once you've done that, it's a matter of evaluating the options. So which option do you think is the best? Which is the most realistic? What are the different complications or challenges with each of the options? And at the end of it, you kind of say, okay, cool. Now that we've evaluated all of the options, what's the way forward? What are we going to do as a result of this conversation? So you're picking an option, you're picking a course of action, and then this part here is really where you develop an action plan. And you say, okay, cool, what are you going to do? Now, at this stage, I'll often talking to people and I say, what are the first 3 things that you need to do in order to implement that particular option? And the theory here is we're kind of breaking it down into micro steps and micro actions so that people build a little bit of momentum. They know exactly what they need to do to start. And so they go and they do that first thing. And, this might be, I need to have a conversation with so-and-so, all right? Another person, another department or another manager. Okay, cool. Do you need to book that first, right? That's the first action they've got to do. So when are you going to book that? And the more specific you are, the more meaningful this process becomes. So I get super specific around what people are going to do, the time that they're going to do it, the date that they're going to do it, and so you need to book that. You're going to send the email off to that person's EA at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Just the more specific you make it, the higher the chance that they are going to go away and execute it, right? And again, I'm asking questions throughout this whole thing. I'm not saying you must do this. I'm not telling them what to do. I'm asking them, what are you going to do? When are you going to do it? All right, and getting them to come up with that and generate that, and that allows them to have the ownership. So they go away and execute the first step. They get a hit of dopamine and say, hey, well, that's awesome. I feel good. It's a win under the belt. I want to feel good again. What's the next step? And don't need to think about it because you've already articulated it in this part, the way forward of the conversation. And as a result of that, they go away and execute step number 2. All right, again, hit a dopamine, feel good, win under the belt. What's next? Well, again, they don't have to think about it because you articulated the first 3 steps. So they go away and they execute that. And all of a sudden, they've got a level of momentum, which means they can figure out the 4th, 5th, 6th step. And this is a kind of the initiative and the proactivity piece comes into play there. And so that's really the grow model, right? It's a really quick, it's an easy framework for you to use to guide your questions when you start to coach. And in reality, it can be super easy. It doesn't have to be super in depth. You can sit down and have a 90-minute coaching conversation using that model, as I often do with executive leaders. But you can also have a 2-3 minute conversation by simply just saying, you're walking past someone in the hallway and they're complaining about something. It's like, well, what do you actually want in this scenario? And then what could you do in order to get that? And you follow that up with, well, what are you going to do as a result? And in 3 questions, you've kind of used the GROW model in a 2-minute conversation, and you've coached on the fly. And that's a great way to actually apply it. And you can see how versatile these coaching skills are. So, a couple of quick stories as to how this can actually change in the workplace, change culture, change performance, and really change a whole lot of different things. So, one of the stories that I absolutely love was back in my Air Force days when I was running some of the coaching skills training as part of the Air Force Leadership Coaching Program. And I had 2 sergeants that came and were in one of the workshops that I was running. Now, these 2 sergeants were aircraft technicians. They oversaw a particular warehouse, a maintenance warehouse, where they had a junior workforce. It's just the way that the posting cycles worked. They had a very junior workforce that had a low experience level. And so they're constantly coming to these 2 sergeants with all their problems. So, hey, what do I do here? How do I overcome this? Where do I find this information? And these 2 sergeants, the result for them, they were constantly solving all the problems for their staff as opposed to doing their own work. And so their own workload was building up and up and up. And as a result of that, they had to either stay late at work, take work home with them, or come into work on weekends. And then they were getting burnt out, as we were talking about earlier. So they attended this training and they said, hey, this sounds pretty good. Why don't we start implementing this approach? And it worked really well. Both of them split shift, covered the entire workforce. And so whenever their junior techos came to them and asked them questions, they started asking them questions in return, right? As opposed to telling them the answers. And after a couple of weeks, a couple of the techos came up and they said, Sarge, what's going on? You never tell us the answers anymore. You always ask us these bloody questions. And so the 2 sergeants brought the entire workforce in and they say, hey, you noticed a difference in our approach. You've noticed that we're asking a whole lot more questions now. We're not telling you the answers. This is why. This is the concept of coaching. We went and did this training, and this is the approach that we're taking with you and what we're trying to achieve. Now, that workforce went away understanding what coaching was and how they could, what the 2 sergeants were trying to do. Now, 6 weeks later, I caught up with these particular sergeants, and everything had completely changed within that workshop. All right, morale was up significantly. The performance was up significantly. The actual numbers that their KPIs and the actual numbers and quantitative data that measured their performance was up significantly. And you know what the biggest benefit for the 2 sergeants was? They got to go home on time and they got their life back. And it's all through simply asking questions, right? And so what was a beautiful example of where performance increases, and these young techos were taking ownership. They were thinking about their own problems. They were solving them themselves. They were finding the information themselves. And so their capability had been developed all through the use of coaching. And so I have many, many stories like that. And a lot of them are kind of littered throughout the book. And so, this is kind of the concept that we're going through today, and just sharing how everything that you do as a leader can be turned into a leadership development opportunity, or a capability an opportunity to develop your people if you choose. And you might say, Cliff, well, what happens if I've just got to make a decision myself, right? That's something that I have to do as a leader. And I would say, yes, coaching skills is really important. Coaching skills can enhance that decision that you make. Because 1, If you have coaching skills and you know the coaching process, you can coach yourself, right? But two, you can pull someone in and you go, well, hey, I've got to make this decision. And I might say, Mary, come in. Mary, pull her into your office and you say, well, Mary, I've got to make this decision. And I'm not sure which way to go. Here's the context, here's the situation, here's the scenario. So Mary, what would you do in that particular scenario? And you get her to, bounce ideas around. You go, well, what's the outcome that you'd be after? What do you think the current constraints and resources that we have to make this decision are there? What do you think about those? You might say, well, what options have you got? And which one do you think is the best option? And you might say, well, hey, Mary, what do you think the second, third, fourth order effects of that particular option are? If we went down that course of action, how would that be received by people at the lower kind of spectrum, lower levels of the organisation? What would their reaction be? And at the end of it, you can go, well, hey, Mary, thank you so much for allowing me to bounce some ideas off in this particular scenario. I'm still not sure which way I'm going to go with this decision, but I just feel more confident being able to make an informed decision based on the input that you've had after this discussion. So thank you very much. Sally goes away. Now you think about that. What's the benefit to Sally there? Sally feels really good because the boss has asked her for her input. Now that must mean that she's a high performer, that the boss values her input. So she thinks, oh, I feel really valued right now. I feel really good. I must be performing. She's got an increased level of self-belief in her. In psychology terms, we call that self-efficacy, her belief that she can make a positive influence and difference. And so she has all of that built up in there, but she also gets exposure to operating at your level. She gets experience kind of wrestling with some of the decisions that are made at a higher level. So really what we're doing is we're expanding her strategic thinking. We're getting her thinking about not just her role, but right across the organization. And it's kind of like on-the-job development for Mary, right? Now you think about the benefit for you as the leader in that scenario. First of all, you get a greater insight into Mary and where she's at and what her capability is. And so you can be more intentional about developing her if you understand where her gaps are or what experience she has to leverage. And so you kind of get benefit in terms of developing her further, but you also get additional information into your decision-making process, right? You get a different perspective. You get insight from somebody at a different level, particularly if she's got a different level of expertise to yourself, you get to leverage that. And so you're going to make a more informed decision. But also, you get an insight into how this decision is going to be perceived at a lower level, all right? And so that's going to tell you, how do I communicate this decision down the track? And you're also going to gain a higher level of clarity in this process. See, one thing that I've learned over the decades that I've been coaching is that when I coach someone on a particular topic, I always walk away with a greater level of clarity on that topic myself. All right. Yes, my coachee has greater clarity, but so do I. And so by asking these questions, you get more clarity yourself, right? Which is really important. And so, you can see there how that is a task that is usually for the individual leader. Like they do it by themselves. But if you've got coaching skill set, you can turn that task into an opportunity to develop your people. And ultimately, coaching is all about helping people to learn how to learn, right? I love Sir John Whitmore. He says that coaching is about maximizing, it's unlocking people's potential in order to maximize their performance. It's helping them learn how to learn rather than teaching them something. And this concept, there's a concept that you would have heard before, and it's often used in the coaching space. It's if you give a man a fish, all right, you feed him for a day. But if you teach a man how to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. And so really that's what we're trying to do. as leaders, what we're trying to do is help our people learn. We're trying to help people become more independent, autonomous, and operating at high level capability, so they can act, and perform at levels without as much input from us. And in that way, you as a leader can focus on the strategic things. And really, what we're doing is, what we want to do is ask people and take people through the coaching process enough times that they start to ask themselves the questions that you would normally ask them. They get so familiar with the process, so familiar with the questions that you're going to ask, that they start to ask it themselves. So this is really what we want people to do, is to go, well, I've got a problem, so I need to go see Cliff. And hold on a minute. Now, I know that Cliff is going to ask me, what's the core problem here? What's the goal and the solution that I'm after? What's the outcome? So can I answer that question? Yes, I can. Okay, cool. Hold on. The next thing he's going to ask me is about the context. He's going to ask me, what are the constraints and considerations that I need to, include in this solution finding process? Yep, I can answer that question. Okay, cool. I know the next question he's going to ask is, what are 3 or 4 different options that I've got in order to achieve the goal or implement the solution? So do I have a couple of those in my back pocket? Yes. I know he's going to ask which one I think is the best option and what I would do to implement. Hold on. If that's the best option and that's what I would do to implement, why don't I just go and solve the problem? Do I even need to see Cliff? I'll just go. And in that way, people encounter a problem, they solve it themselves before you even become aware of it. And ultimately, the end game is that they come to you and say, hey, boss, encountered this. This is what I did. This is how I solved it. This is the result that I got. And you're like, brilliant. That's awesome. And that's the result that you are after. So, hey, how does that sound for you guys? All right, I'm seeing some thumbs up come through here, which is awesome. A couple of comments here. That's exactly what I need in my team. Good. Yes, I've experienced this, and it's great. Excellent. So good comments here. Glad to see it is resonating with you. Really what we're talking about here is making that shift from telling to asking. What we're doing is we're taking passive problem presenters that actually reinforce the pressure on us as leaders, and we're turning them into active solution generators that actually relieve that pressure rather than reinforce it. Okay, and that key message I want you to take home is that with coaching skills, everything that you do as a leader can be an opportunity to develop your people if you so choose. All right. Now, really, if we're going to succeed in the world today, we need people, we need teams that are thinking. All right. And in reality, it's the quality of the questions that you ask that will determine the quality of the thinking that gets done by your people, and therefore the power of your insights that are gained. Okay, if we're going to succeed in the modern world, we need teams that are being proactive, that are engaged, that are motivated, and that are actually thinking themselves. And when we do that, that's when they're going to be satisfied. That's when they're going to have the insights that are going to allow them to perform at a higher level. And that's when you guys are going to succeed as leaders, all right? To both driving performance and developing capability. All right, so this is the part where I talk about extra resources, okay? So everybody that's registered for this webinar today, you're going to get a beginner's guide to coaching conversations. And so this is a couple-page document, and it's basically outlining the GROW model, a whole bunch of questions there to give you a level of inspiration to start asking questions to your people, to start coaching right away. You can take that document and start coaching tomorrow. You can give it to one of your team and they can take it and start coaching tomorrow as well, all right? I'm going to give you a GROW model poster. And so this is really a visual cue to keep coaching and the concept of coaching front of mind for you. So unless we've got something to remind us to keep it front of mind, we're going to sucked into the busyness of life, and we'll default to the way we've always done things. We'll default to telling. And so what we need is just a visual cue to help us to remember front of mind. Let's start asking some questions, and that's what this poster is designed to do. the first chapter of the book, The Coaching Leader, right? A great, that's where I outline this analogy between the captain and co-pilot, and really around the dual responsibilities of leadership being to drive performance and also to develop capability. And a couple of special offers, right? For those of you that have registered here today and have joined us online today. If you want to take, you're really interested in this concept, you want to take your skills to the next level and be equipped to coach more effectively, then on a couple of weeks' time, the 19th of October, I'm running a coaching leader kind of workshop, right? Now, normally I would run this training as part of a 9-month program internally for clients. But what I'm doing, because I've had a bit of feedback and had some conversations and requests for a public program, what we're doing is we're running a condensed version of this 9-month program available, open to the public. So anyone can come and join. And we're going to go through what are the specific skills that allow you to coach. And today I've really just talked at the high level concept and introduced a framework, but there's a whole lot of skills that will help you as a leader use coaching skills in the workplace. And so we'll do that. You get an extra coaching session after the full day workshop. You get a copy of the book and a whole bunch of other resources that will help you on your leadership and coaching journey. So if you would like that, scan the QR code. And for those of you that joined online today, special deal, all right, it's $100 off that particular workshop. So if you put CXLX, big C and L, capital C and L, small X's, no spaces, in the code thing there, when you register for the program, you'll get $100 off the purchase price there. Okay, so if that's interested to you, then I am keen to see you there. But really, guys, that is that's the masterclass. That's our time together today. We are here almost at 1 o'clock. At the end of our time. So I'll stick around for a couple of minutes to answer any questions that people have. But really, I thank you so much for joining us. And in reality, go and ask some more questions. All right, I encourage you, whenever you're tempted to give advice or tell people an answer, I encourage you just stop and ask one more question before you do. All right. I'm not saying that telling people what to do and giving advice is bad, but ask one more question before you do. And that way you're engaging people's mind and getting people to think a little bit more before you give them the answer that they need. All right. You'll be surprised at how many times they come up with the answer themselves and you don't need to tell them at all. And that's what we want to train people to do. So, hey, coaching skills, it's the way to go. It's going to enhance your performance. It's going to develop capability. It is going to make you a better leader. So go eat, sleep, coach, repeat, and I will see you later. Thank you very much for joining.